We're back, your favorite podcast show of the week. This is Location Weekly. It's episode number 529, and we are recording live on August the 10th. Brianna, how are you? What's happening?
I'm good. Settling in, not quite like officially a New Yorker yet feeling, but starting to find like the grocery store and the dry cleaning and, normal things that you need to find. So um, that's good. We've got a little bit longer of a summer here, which is nice because like Georgia school ends super early, but they've already started back and we don't start back until almost mid-September. So we've got a nice long summer, which has been good. So yeah, I'm good, settling in, getting back to work, all good stuff. How about you? What's new?
Yeah, I'm good. It's the business is rolling along, and managed to get away for the weekend with my family. So yeah, we have some friends that live in farm country a couple hours away from the big city here, and went out there and spent the weekend with them, and swimming in the lake and whatnot. So it was good, and the weather was nice. So I feel like I relaxed a little bit, which is good because I don't do that very often. But yeah, and my Blue Jays took 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox on the weekend, so that was nice. And we're in the thick of the wild card race, so let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At some point, maybe I'll watch baseball. I don't know. I haven't really had a lot of TV time lately, but we'll get
I've
back
been
to it.
watching a lot. We have an exciting team, right? Like it's a powerhouse offense, right? With Guerrero Jr. and Bichette, and now Springer is like on fire. He's won 2 back-to-back Player of the Weeks. So yeah, it's going well. On that, and the pitching is stabilizing. I'll say it's not great, but it's stabilizing. So usually we have to out hit people to win. So
Yeah. I feel like it kind of ebbs and flows, like between whether it's a pitcher's game or a hitter's game, you
yeah.
have like those
Anyhow,
those
well, we have a good
pairs.
show. 4 stories. One very interesting one we'll kick off with. But yeah, let's just jump right into it with Ariana leading us out.
Yeah, so this one's a little close to home for me. My prior role where I spent many years, digital envoy, also known as digital element. Many are familiar with that name, but a leader in the IP intelligence, IP geolocation space has made a very interesting acquisition. So they have acquired XMode, who is now being rebranded as OutLogic. And if you don't remember, X mode at all in the space, they really started off as drunk mode, using location data to help college students, get home safely when out partying. Continued to kind of evolve on that location data with their SDK and have continued to do so. And, recently there was probably not super recently, but not too long back, we've had some interesting stories that came out around X mode. There was a lot that happened around the New York Times, Washington Post covering stories that really focused on privacy sensitivity, specifically around sensitive apps. And so as part of this acquisition, there's been some changes and some new announcements that I think are positive and moving in the right direction. So just to outline a few of those, really like consumer privacy and data protection are going to continue to be really important issues in the industry and for these companies as well. But after the acquisition, Digital Envoy decided to institute a kind of upgraded a new code of ethics. So they have a data ethics review panel. They've implemented a sensitive app policy and how that data could be treated. And then they're also looking to contractually prohibit clients from re-identification. So, when you think about clients who might be using sensitive data or sensitive apps and making sure that that data is not getting into, different hands that could be using data for evil and not good. Digital Envoy has also taken additional care by shutting off all US location data that's going to any defense contractors. So I think that that's also a step in the right direction. But really, I think the focus is going to be using this acquisition to help drive a lot of the fraud prevention efforts that Digital Envoy, Digital Element has for a lot of their clients. So those are items such as like VPN and proxy identification for geo rights management for streaming and things of that nature, or banking authentication, all of those different things. So it's going to enrich the client's decision making, and they want to also do that while preserving safety and privacy of consumers. So I think it's a good acquisition. I think it's strong. I think both companies will benefit from one another in different ways, and can enhance some of the offerings that Digital Envoy has had throughout the years. And they're going to continue the data for good efforts. So we've seen some of those come out where, previously XMode was tracking COVID-19 pandemic and looking at location data and how that was moving and what that meant for numbers around specific cities and things of that nature. But they'll also be using data for good for things such as like, the fight against human trafficking, emergency vehicle evacuation routes, all of those items, and other essential services. So I'm hopeful for both companies. I obviously know them both well, have, worked extensively in partnership with XMode throughout the years, leading up to my change and moving to Samsung. But I think that this is a good partnership that will benefit them in the near term. So yeah, I wish all of my former colleagues and partners good luck. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good, a good place to land, right, for X Mode and whatever OutLogic, I guess, is what they're rebranding it as now. I think the controls that you alluded to that they've put in place here around ethics and privacy and preventing re-identification of the data, all of those things are really important and need to be part of any kind of go forward positioning and strategy. So I like that, Digital Envoy Element, are kind of making that, front and center part of the brand, right, of what they're going to market with. I understand that they're retiring the SDK or XDK or whatever they call it, and kind of focusing more on a publisher to publisher type of framework. So I think we'll see how that plays out in terms of an offering and what the impact might be on, from a revenue perspective kind of going in. I think there's, we'll see some, I would anticipate we'd see some decline there in the short term, but I think it can be, sort of rebuilt fairly quickly, by shifting to this other, other model and positioning, around the ethical side of things. And I think what you talked about, around, the idea of using the data for good or, preventing fraud from happening or those kinds of things. These are all really important, positive use cases of location data. And we need more companies, to really talk about, not only its value, but its importance as a data set, and what can be done with it. So it's not just here's an ad, right? There's so many other amazing things that you can do with this data. And so to me, that's the real value here, is a recognition that, as a company, Digital Envoy is looking at this going, we have a role to play, and having XMode's platform as part of what we can do, mashed up with what we already have, and our history and our customers and our offerings, there's a lot of strength there. So I like it. I think it's a good combination. So, yeah.
Yep.
All right, on to our second story for this week, Walmart. So this time we're not just talking about Walmart doing something kind of cool in its stores or anything like that. Like a lot of retailers, Walmart has invested heavily in technology, especially when it comes to delivery and pickup and all that kind of stuff we've been talking about over the last year in particular, and kind of the growth of that in a COVID pandemic environment. And so Walmart's decided that their technology is so good that they're just going to make this available to other retailers and other companies that want to leverage what they've already built and kind of spend a lot of time trying to work out the kinks in. And so they're making this accessible, Walmart's cloud-based services through a marketplace, and so it's their technology around fulfillment. It's their 2-day shipping fulfillment services. So if you're a smaller retailer, you can basically use Walmart to do your fulfillment for you. Not a new concept. We've talked about Amazon doing this for other brands before, but interesting to see that Walmart's trying to kind of keep up with what Amazon's doing there and kind of opening up its fulfillment capabilities and its tech in that way. It also enables order pickup communications and check-in options. Notifying store assistants or associates, I should say. All that sort of arrival time type of stuff that you see with the pickup and delivery stuff at stores. So they're making all of that tech sort of available and accessible through this marketplace to other retailers. So if you're a smaller or mid-market size retailer and you don't have the tech chops to go and build your own fulfillment capabilities or your own sort of pickup digital services or whatever, now you can leverage Walmart's knowledge there and platform there to kind of do that yourselves. So kind of cool. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's very cool. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, hey, Amazon's been doing this for a while. We've seen that competition sort of continue between Walmart and Amazon. Where Amazon is doing fulfillment for other small companies. Now Walmart's moving into that, Walmart's acquisition of, what was it, Jet.com back in the day. And so they're kind of making these moves to stay relevant, stay competitive, and offer some of the same services. I do like that they're opening, this up, and it's a beneficial offering or a competitive offering, even to give smaller retailers the ability to have a choice between fulfillment options. So I think it's a good move. It's a new revenue stream, and it probably I would love to know what's the fine print there, because how does this also help Walmart determine what they should be making more of based upon what they're delivering and fulfilling for other companies. And that's where I think there's a little bit of a conflict of interest for the companies that use fulfillment, let's say from Amazon, for example, because what happens typically is that, Amazon starts fulfilling for X good, and they say, oh, this is really growing, so Amazon should make their own brand and create that because we can sell it faster, cheaper, deliver it, more efficiently than doing this for, another third party. And then they kind of monopolize things. So I think that it's, ultimately this is a move for Walmart, just like it has been a move for Amazon. But, in the interim, if fulfillment is the biggest challenge you have an option.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing too is that, in terms of how they're making this available, they've partnered with Adobe to do that. So this is like that marketplace I talked about is on the Adobe Commerce platform. So it's not they obviously Walmart has huge retail footprint, right, in terms of stores. Amazon doesn't have that, but they have years and years of expertise in that sort of marketplace setting, right? So Walmart basically sort of matched that, in by sort of partnering with Adobe on this to kind of make it available in that sense. And Adobe's huge, right? So I like that too.
Yep.
All right,
sure.
Third story.
All right, so this is a new partnership that is being announced between our friends over at PlaceIQ and IZEA, not IKEA, IZEA, IZEA. Many of you, I'm sure we've talked about PlaceIQ a lot of times on this show. Duncan, CEO over there that we've known for a long time, actually just caught up with him via email the other day randomly. So the story is timely. But they have partnered with IZEA, which IZEA provides influencer marketing technology, data, services, all of those things for different brands. And so they are always looking to bridge that online and offline gap in media attribution. And that's where PlaceIQ comes in. So obviously location data and insights that they model to consumer behavior. So really their goal here is to address the shift that's been happening, in consumer behavior and how we purchase, especially that's happened over the last 2 years or so within this pandemic, and how we do things like curbside pickup versus in-store delivery, different ways that we are buying and consuming goods and services. So really they want to help identify and reach these customers that are the right customers. And then they want to be able to prove that, from a measurement and attribution standpoint, that there is lift that's happening. And what is the difference here and some other offerings that you might say, like, is really the fact that they're doing this tied to influencer marketing piece that makes it slightly unique. So we've seen other players like this, Foursquare with their acquisition of Factual, Commerce, Signals, or Verisk that does this type of modeling for both targeting and measurement based on behaviors. And but I think the idea that this is using the influencer marketing piece is again, like, that's kind of their unique play here. So they'll measure things like actual percentage of lift on location visits of consumers who were exposed to specific media. And then they can create consumer audiences based on previous shopping behavior as well. So a recent stat that they mentioned was like a marketing campaign drove over 30,000 in-store grocery visits, estimating about 1.6 million in additional grocery sales or lift. So, that's the kind of insights and measurement that they want to be able to see as it's tied to those who are actually exposed to advertising. So my buttoned up thoughts on this are, again, like, I don't know that it's a super unique offering. We have other players in the space that are doing this, but I do like their kind of different entry point being the influencer marketing that they're trying to link this to. So that's my take,
Yeah,
seems like a good partner.
I don't have a lot to add to this other than I think that sort of unique target audience that they're going after is a little bit different. Like, I'm not aware of other platforms out there that have been trying to measure the impact that an influencer community or influencer marketing can have on an ad campaign. So I mean, we talk a lot about mobile ad, and attribution, and how geodata plays into that. But from a social media or influencer perspective, I haven't seen any partnerships or any sort of real measurement around that. So I think it is interesting, and I think that we hear a lot. Certainly, if we want to take it to the far extreme, Kardashians and people like that post something and the next day there's like 100 million in sales or whatever. Being able to actually measure, does that influencer post or whatever that they're doing actually result in foot traffic to the stores, or what kind of lift are we seeing from that? And I talk a lot, going back over the years of the LBMA, I talk a lot about that gap, right, between social and location. And I many times I've been speaking at conferences, and I like say, hey, I don't like, it doesn't matter to me, if you as a brand have 1 million people or 100 million people that follow you on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, if you don't know where they are and you can't convert them into revenue, right? So kind of closing that gap between the social followers and where they are in the physical world, their location, and being able to drive them to the restaurant or the store or wherever they can purchase something or interact with your brand, is really, to me, what it's all about. And so that's kind of the value I see here in this partnership, is sort of a recognition of the need to close that gap and create some attribution around what's going on in the influencer community. So I like it, and I think to some extent too, I would even go one step further to say, probably another similar area where we don't see a lot of measurement is in sort of promotional or sort of like event based marketing, like where let's say you throw out a street team to go and promote or hand out flyers or do things, whatever around a particular brand. How do you measure that, right? And the impact that that's having. I think that's another similar kind of area like these influencers, where there's a little bit of a gap that the data and the tech is out there to close, right? So this is a good example of it with what PlaceIQ and IZ are doing.
Yep.
All right, on to our final story. Speaking of social media platforms, today we're going to talk about TikTok. So over in the UK, TikTok is working with out of home to help artists that are unsigned. So these are musicians and so on that are unsigned artists. So they're not tied in with a label. And you can imagine right now, kind of coming through the pandemic and all of that, what the impact that it's had on the music industry, especially the live music industry. People aren't, there's no concerts happening. People aren't going to live music events. And so TikTok said, hey, this is something where, we want to try and help and do something here with these unsigned artists. So in various, the streets of various British cities, using billboards and posters, in particular in Glasgow, Liverpool, and Bristol, you can scan a featured QR code on one of these posters and be taken directly to a dedicated showcase in TikTok of that unsigned artist. So there's a video sharing portal that's been opened up that's called Find the Unsigned. There's an in-app page that links to artists with audiences. And it's a kind of a cool, like tech-wise, nothing new here. Like obviously in the mashup with out of home, nothing new there. But just in terms of what they're trying to do with it and who they're trying to help with it, I think it's a really great idea. And it's a great way to sort of say, hey, TikTok is, not just a cool video platform, not just a bunch of teenagers. We have causes and we're helping out. And I think this is like I said, a segment of the population that's been really hit hard by the pandemic, the artists and cultural community. So I like it. I think it's, like I said, very low tech in some ways, but in other ways, very, very cool in terms of what they're trying to address. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking of a story it reminded me of that we covered a long time ago, where there was an app that was launched for London buskers, like the street performing artists, so that you could, tip or pay them via an app. And I feel like this is like the much larger upgrade to that.
Yeah.
With a lot more reach and, efficacy. So I do like this. I would echo your sentiments around like seeing TikTok doing something that is a little bit more centered around giving back or helping, starving artists. So yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to add, but I think that it's good to see more than just like, dance challenges happening there. So
Well, yeah, and I think that my last comment on this before we wrap it is like two things actually. One is I was surprised, maybe as I think about it, maybe not so surprised, but initially I was surprised to see that TikTok has a guy named Paul Horican whose title is Head of Music Operations. So they actually think about this industry, as significant and important to them to have somebody who's actually responsible for it. Second is, kind of, I'm not of the TikTok generation. You're closer to it than I am, but it's more my kids, right? But it kind of thinking backwards in time here to the early days of YouTube, as a video platform, and TikTok's primarily video. A lot of music artists that were unsigned, that's how they sort of got word out about about their music and what they do, and got that exposure to get signed. I'm thinking right here at home here in Canada, like Justin Bieber was discovered on YouTube, for example. Right, so I think there's a lot of potential here with this very fast-growing, very popular platform in TikTok to really, create some, a channel and a vehicle for, getting these unsigned artists, the exposure they need to get signed. and become popular. So
Yeah.
I like it.
And also just like one more thought is it kind of reminds me of some friends of mine a long time ago launched a music kind of network called Affix Music. And I haven't checked in on where this is in status, but really it was all about taking unsigned artists' music and quickly they have this platform that would quickly create and generate a license for use that would pay the artists, a reasonable portion of that fee. And it would help, again, like with discovery, with, just kind of driving some revenue. So I think that there's a lot of like these pieces of the puzzle that can be pulled together, including the other app that we had mentioned for kind of linking somebody in need for a specific type of art or design with a artist, whether that's music or digital or whatever it may be. So I think that there's like a theme where we are continuing to see almost this this customization being tailored more towards like a smaller but more prominent demographic than these like large artists that are already signed. Like we're really focusing in now on how do we connect those in need or those in a discovery mode with those who are having that content and can produce that. So I like that we're seeing some new ideas being brought to the table around that.
Yeah, and I think that's you touched on something there too, which is like this whole area of the protection and the copyrights around the ownership of a lot of that stuff. And often when things are shared digitally, it's stuff's getting stolen, and the artist can quickly lose control. A friend of mine, Rain Maida, who's better known from the Canadian band up here, Our Lady Peace, has a new startup that's specifically around digital rights protection and so on, called Sing. You can look it up. It's just S, and the I is a exclamation point. Sing, but with an exclamation point for the I. So take a look at that too. If you're an artist out there, it's a cool platform for sort of helping protect that. Yeah, and it uses like blockchain and things like that to sort of manage the flow of the data. So
yeah, sure.
So there you go. Well, that's our show for this week. You've been listening to episode number 529 of Location Weekly. We thank you, as always, for your time. We'll be back next week with another show. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.